The United States and the Philippines initiated large-scale joint military exercises on April 22nd, with 120 warships assembling in the West Philippine Sea, part of the South China Sea. In response, China deployed a counterforce of 124 vessels, including Navy ships, Coast Guard vessels, and maritime militia boats. On the surface, it looked like the Chinese naval deployment was to closely monitor the U.S. Philippine fleet, but in reality, it only served as a cover for a significant number of Chinese submarines operating below the surface. On April 20th, a submarine confrontation between China and the US already took place. Two Japanese Self-Defense Force SH-60K anti-submarine helicopters were training 200 kilometers south of Tokyo when they suddenly crashed into the sea. Analysts suggest that the helicopters had detected a Chinese submarine and were exposed to electromagnetic interference from China prior to the crash. In August last year, an accident involving the Type 093 nuclear submarine numbered 417 resulted in the deaths of all 55 crew members, severely affecting the morale of the Chinese Navy's submarine force. It is also reported that the recent drowning of two Japanese helicopters was greatly applauded by the Chinese authorities, boosting their confidence in what they viewed as a strategic victory. However, the US still holds a significant advantage in electronic warfare, given that they're equipped with an extensive range of sophisticated technologies. Due to concerns over technology transfer, these are not fully shared with Japan, for fear of them being acquired by rivals such as China or Russia. This aggressive maneuver by China has likely prompted the US to tighten its guard, particularly as discussions are underway between the US and Japan to restructure the command system of US forces based in Japan. Thus, it will not be so easy for the Chinese military to employ the same tactics in the future operations. Even such a temporary victory managed to please President Xi Jinping immensely. In his view, the submarine crew had finally grasped his strategy of taking the initiative. If they hadn't brought down those two helicopters, the submarine might very well have been sunk by Japan. However, if it had actually been sunk, the outside world might not have known, and even the Chinese military might not have noticed that the submarine had gone missing. The Chinese military follows an unwritten rule. If a submarine is cornered by an enemy, the crew must choose death rather than surface and surrender. This demonstrates the Chinese Communist Party's disregard for the lives of ordinary soldiers, as submariners are often prepared for missions that could be fatal. By contrast, Western nations like the UK and the US allow their crew to surrender and handle situations through diplomatic means. A 7-minute video titled Into the Deep, released on the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Navy in April this year, also hinted at this grim reality. Toward the end of the video, a group of sailors about to deploy are seen on the deck of a ship while a voiceover states, "No one should be missing," meaning everyone must make sure they have been photographed. This is so that if the sailors are lost at sea during this deployment, they will at least have a photograph for their tombstone. One of the primary missions when attacking submarines is to enter enemy territorial waters by nearby warship formations to launch attacks. The risk of being detected by the enemy during these missions is extremely high. It is said that many Chinese Navy submarines have been sunk this way, with the Marines' remains unrecoverable. Near Weihai at the northern part of Liugong Island, there is a cemetery for submariners who died on such missions. The graves are unmarked to keep the information of the submarine force secret. To divert public attention, the CCP constructed a memorial museum for the First Sino-Japanese War near the cemetery. This strategy allows top leaders to claim they're visiting the museum during special commemorative days, thereby concealing the existence of the special cemetery and the number of submariners buried there. President Xi Jinping visited Liugong Island in 2018. These actions serve a dual purpose. First is to console the families of the submariners by affirming that the government has not forgotten their loved ones' sacrifices, with even President Xi personally commemorating them. The second purpose is to use these commemorative activities to promote morale and stability within the submarine force. The crew at the Liuegong Island submarine training base are well aware of their fate and the treatment their families receive whenever a submarine fails to return. Submarine personnel are also required to keep their job a secret. In front of family and friends, they have to say they're part of a different military unit to perform other military duties. The crew seldom post on social media and must be very cautious when attending social gatherings. That's why they have very few social connections. When it comes to relationships, the families of potential partners would have to inquire about their occupation and workplace, which submariners find difficult to disclose. Even after marriage, a spouse may remain unaware of the submariner's true identity. If the marital relationship is not strong, it often leads to divorce. Over time, more and more submariners choose to retire after just a few years of service. There is a notable lack of experienced veterans in the submarine force, and without seasoned personnel, submariners cannot operate effectively. Recruiting new submariners is also challenging in an era dominated by internet celebrities and social media influencers, where earning millions annually through live streaming is so common. Few families from higher social strata are willing to send their children to serve in the submarine force. Even families from the lower class are reluctant as well. Additionally, the physical fitness requirements for submarine personnel are extremely demanding. A video shows young recruits struggling to deadlift 130 kilograms, and even experienced veterans find lifting 150 kilograms challenging. In contrast, US military personnel can easily lift 200 kilograms, and American teenagers are able to lift 90 kilograms without difficulty. This starkly highlights the significant gap in physical fitness between Chinese and American military personnel. Nevertheless, the Chinese submarine force has experienced numerous perilous moments. An exclusive documentary by CCTV7, later shared by the Military Fans Worldwide YouTube channel on April 27th, left viewers in shock. The documentary featured the Chinese Type 372 conventional power submarine, which encountered a sudden underwater cliff during a mission in early 2014. A huge change in the density of seawater, which reduced the buoyancy, caused the submarine to sink rapidly into the deep sea before it had time to float up, and was crushed by the pressure of seawater. To prevent seawater from flooding in, the crew had to quickly shut more than 100 valves. A delay of even 1 to 2 seconds in closing a valve would allow seawater to enter and force the submarine to continue sinking. This video makes it clear just how deficient Chinese submarine technology and equipment are. Dropping a few dozen meters underwater requires shutting hundreds of valves, which also has to be coordinated seamlessly by the crew. A single mistake in closing the valve could be catastrophic. Western submarine experts would be astounded by this, as their submarines can operate well under vastly different conditions. Chinese submarine designs definitely have flaws, as a submarine now should operate under automation rather than relying on manual operation. Moreover, the emergency protocols for Chinese submarines also appear to be deficient. Otherwise, such incidents would not occur. It is evident that the gap between Chinese and Western submarines is significant. The 75th anniversary documentary of the Navy also highlighted that crew members on a strategic nuclear submarine must rely on their ears to detect sonar echoes to determine if there are signals from enemy anti-submarine activities. This practice is considered rare in modern navies, where advanced sonar systems can automatically identify targets and take swift preemptive action. Relying on manual detection not only reduces efficiency but also increases the risk of errors with potentially severe consequences. Although submarine personnel in China receive the best rations in the military, their diet is limited to canned food. Enjoying a hot bowl of dumpling is a rare treat, and fresh vegetables is simply out of the question. In contrast, Western submarine personnel enjoy standard of meals similar to those on surface ships, which is of higher quality than their Chinese counterparts. Western submarines are equipped with refrigeration facility to store fresh vegetables and fruits, and some even have small greenhouses for growing fresh vegetables on board. In addition to drinking water, Chinese submarines are allotted only a small amount of fresh water for daily personal hygiene, such as washing their face and brushing their teeth. They typically only brush their teeth and then wipe their faces with a damp towel every day, and that's it. Western submarines, however, have much greater freshwater storage capabilities, allowing crew members to use several liters of water per day and shower daily. Submarine operations pose significant logistical challenges. Each deployment requires a large amount of clothing due to limited discharge capacity on submarines. To avoid revealing their position, Chinese submarines typically use evaporation devices to handle wastewater, achieving what is referred to as zero discharge. As a result, submariners are unable to wash their clothes during the months at sea. Western nuclear submarines are equipped with waste incineration devices, but Chinese submarines still compress and store waste on board, which are only disposed of once they return to port. This underscores the challenging living conditions abroad. It's reported that toxic gas poisoning resulted in the deaths of 55 personnel aboard the Type 093 nuclear submarine numbered 417, which highlights these harsh conditions. It's clear that the U.S. Navy's submarines hold a distinct advantage. Thus, China employs a wolf pack strategy in submarine warfare against the United States, setting traps to hunt down American submarines. President Xi Jinping once used a metaphor of cage farming to describe the military traps laid by China in its near seas. These traps include intelligent mines, anchor chain hooks, and various types of unmanned submarines, all lurking near the first island chain, ready to ensnare U.S. submarines in an accident. In October 2021, there were reports that the U.S. Seawolves-class nuclear submarine USS Connecticut collided with an underwater mountain in the South China Sea. However, according to U.S. Navy regulations, submarines must maintain a silent speed of 18 knots or even lower to 14 knots during combat duty. It's improbable that a collision at such speeds with floating debris could cause injuries to 13 crew members, with 2 severely injured unless it was struck by something at high velocity. A Chinese military analyst suggests a possibility. He wrote that in early October 2021, the Seawolves-class submarine USS Connecticut detected a Chinese Type 094 strategic nuclear submarine near the South China Sea and began tailing it. This maneuver fell into China's trap. China employed the Guanlan Science Satellite in near-Earth orbit, the national supercomputing centers, and other resources combined with coordinates provided by the Chinese strategic nuclear submarine. This enabled them to track the Seawolf-class submarine using LIDAR water profiling from space and high-resolution ocean atmosphere models. Without the Chinese submarine acting as bait, detecting a Seawolf-class submarine would generally be more challenging. The Southern Theater Command dispatched anti-submarine patrol aircraft to the area, deploying active sonar buoys to search for the USS Connecticut. The Connecticut had to evade urgently, and China also deployed a Type 927 ocean acoustic monitoring ship and advanced unmanned submarines to corner the Seawolf-class submarine. The hunt continued from daylight into the deep night. Subsequently, Chinese carrier-based anti-submarine aircraft were launched in the Paracel Island area using more powerful sonar to bombard the Connecticut, detecting its bow sonar position. Unmanned boats were then dispatched to ram and ultimately damage the sonar on the Seawolf-class submarine, effectively blinding it and forcing it to the surface. In this incident, although the US knew that China was responsible, it was difficult to present conclusive evidence and thus could not directly accuse China. As a result, the US silently accepted the loss. How China knew the exact departure time and approximate location of the Seawolf-class submarine remains a mystery. It's likely that China had obtained intelligence on US military base or had placed detection devices along the route to set up traps. The propaganda film released for the 75th anniversary of the Chinese Navy indeed showed segments of a strategic nuclear submarine ready to make sacrifices. It was revealed that President Xi Jinping planned to disclose the action of this submarine after defeating the United States. This supports the disclosure by the Chinese military analyst, suggesting he might have sourced within the submarine units. The U.S. Pacific Fleet confirmed that the USS Connecticut did indeed collide on October 2, 2021, in the South China Sea. Following the incident, the U.S. Navy announced on November 4th that it had relieved the USS Connecticut's commander, executive officer, and chief of the boat due to a loss of confidence in their intellect and decision-making capability. At that time, there were no other US forces in the South China Sea, and the Chinese strategic nuclear submarines likely baited the Connecticut into a vulnerable position. If the commander had adhered to US regulations for decision-making and command, he might have avoided this predicament. Some analysts believe that China specifically targeted the Seawolf-class submarine, suspecting it had attacked their strategic nuclear submarine, prompting a planned retaliation. In the final scenes of the Navy birthday propaganda film, footage of a Type 094 strategic nuclear submarine launching JL-2 intercontinental missiles was shown. Some media analysts suggest that China displayed this footage just before the US Secretary of State's visit to China, with an aim to signaling its nuclear capabilities. However, a closer analysis reveals that the footage was actually from 2015 and not newly filmed, indicating that China was merely reusing old material and had not conducted recent JL-2 missile tests. Since the 2015 test of the JL-2 missiles, China had not conducted further tests. This may reflect concerns that frequent tests could reveal their submarines' positions and also indicate a lack of confidence in the JL-2 missiles' performance. It's rumored that following a major incident with the Type 093 nuclear submarine, the PLA has been reluctant to resume testing the JL-2 missile. Every time the JL series is launched, the U.S. Department of Defense platform, the Washington Free Beacon, immediately announces it as the launch can be detected. But this time, there was no detection of a JL missile launch from a submarine. China's Type 094 strategic nuclear submarines are equipped with the second-generation JL-2 submarine-launched ballistic missiles reportedly capable of reaching distances of 7,400 to 9,000 kilometers and carrying 1 to 3 nuclear warheads. However, China's solid fuel engines are large and not highly efficient, requiring a significant amount of fuel. This results in the missile's considerable length, which forces it to resort to a turtle-back design, a compromise solution due to technological shortcomings. Furthermore, from a broader military and diplomatic strategy perspective, China's use of propaganda to demonstrate nuclear deterrence inevitably draws comparisons to Russia's frequent nuclear threats. Whenever the United States provides military aid to Ukraine, Russia vocally threatens to launch intercontinental missiles, yet US and Western military support continues. The US has even prepared 1,000 tactical missiles for Ukraine, but Russia has remained silent about using a nuclear weapon. China's deterrence strategy now appears to be reduced to no more than a propaganda film. In comparison to Russia's strong rhetoric, it seems feeble, possibly leading the US and the West to view it as outdated and lacking any real deterrent power. It's clear that the CCP is facing a dearth of options. With the ongoing political unrest in Russia, President Xi Jinping finds himself unable to exert influence over the situation. As the Kremlin grapples with internal struggles during cabinet formation, neither of the prime ministerial candidates appears favorable to China. Consequently, Xi Jinping is now looking towards Europe probing for potential opportunities.